This week is Parshas Toldos. It started tonight. So I thought what I would do is talk about one of the most difficult areas of Torah, and that's Yakov Eisav. I once spoke about it, but what it does, it shows the beauty or the depth of the Torah. In other words, what it is, obviously, is you hear a different story. There are two storylines in the Torah, which is interesting. There's the regular storyline, the narrative, which is obvious, and the second narrative is concealed. The interesting thing about it is that the second narrative, or the hidden narrative, provides the real answers to an incredible amount of questions. So, the first upper level story, you can answer many questions, but it's patchwork. Here's a question, here's your answer. Here's another question, here's your answer. So as many questions as there are, right, there are many solutions, there's no really connection between them. Whereas when you talk about the second story, which is the hidden story, it's one story that answers all the questions. So this story really is a tremendous demonstration of the tremendous depth of the Torah. So we start off with Toldos, Parshas Toldos. And all of a sudden, it's the birth of Yakov and Eisav. And there are many, many difficulties in Yakov and Eisav. Many. First of all, what in the world is going on? You have two embryos fighting each other? What is that supposed to mean? And Rivka says, I can't take it anymore. So Rivka goes to a place, really it's a prophetic place. They say, ask what's going on? She obviously, there's a tremendous struggle here. So they tell her, they say, hey, there are two guys within you, and they're twins. And each one is struggling, because each one wants to do something else. When you walk by a Beis Medrash, one twin wants to go to Beis Medrash, whatever that means. And when you walk by a place of Avodah Zarah, right? The other twin wants to do that. So the question is, what does that mean, really? That there are two twins that are struggling with each other. That is the question, Besides, now we know, of course, that Eisav is the one that's struggling to worship idols. What doesn't make sense is, could you imagine an embryo wants to worship idols, whatever that means? Why do we call him a Rasha? Why is he an evil person? He's finished. You know what I'm saying? An embryo that wants to worship idols is finished. There's no free will here. He wanted to worship idols before he's born. So what do you want from this guy? You know what I'm saying? It's like the Gemara says, take a guy, give him money, nice clothing, comb his hair or whatever, give him everything he needs, and then put him next to a kuppah shazonis, a brothel. So the Gemara says, Ma yaseh ben v'lo. What can this guy do and not sin? He's got the wherewithal, he certainly has the desire, and he's got the place, he's got the opportunity. What do you want from this guy? Clearly the person's not a Baal Bechira, he cannot exercise free will. So if Eisav wants to worship idols before he's born, he's finished. So then why does God call him a Rasha? We all call him a Rasha. Think about it, In fact, God calls him a Rasha. Yes, Eisav, I hated Eisav because he's a Rasha. But the question is why? You've doomed him before he was born. That's a very difficult question to answer.
Where's his bechira?
What?
Where's his bechira?
Where's his free will? And if he has no free will, he's not an evil person. Second thing is, how in the world can you have twins like this? Twins are usually twins, and they were really identical. They were not fraternal. How do you know? Because when Yaakov died and they wanted to bury him, remember later he went to Egypt and then he died, and he promised Yosef that you got to take me back to the Moras HaMachpelah, right? And he took him back, and all of a sudden they wanted to bury Yaakov in that heaven, Moras HaMachpelah. Who shows up? Eisav. Eisav, you can't put him here. Hey, Avram bought it, Yitzchak, but who says you're the heir to be buried here? I want to be buried here. So what happened is Hushim ben Don, Hushim the son of Don was apparently deaf. So he didn't hear what was going on. So he said, this is crazy. This is insane. This is a tremendous bizoyan. This is an embarrassment to the dead body of Yakov Avinu. I mean, who are we talking about? Yaakov. So what did he do? He took his sword and he lopped his head off. He cut Eisav's head off. And Eisav's head rolled at the foot of Yaakov. But Eisav is buried in the Moras Machpelah. Just his head.
Just his head.
Yeah, his body never made it. So therefore, what do we see? That that they were identical, because it says that he couldn't chop his head off from the front because he looked just like Yaakov Avinu. You imagine he couldn't do that, so he went in the back and cut his head off in the back. So what do we see? Obviously, they're identical. So the question is, how can two twins be so different? What is that supposed to mean? And like I said,
how could they be identical? One was hairy and one was smooth skin.
Well,
it's not identical.
No, but okay, in the body, but maybe their face was identical. It doesn't say, just obviously Yaakov had hairy arms.
They were wearing clothes.
Yeah, but if one's hairy, one's smooth skin, likely those are not identical.
Okay, but I'm bringing you proof from a medrash that he couldn't do it from the front because he looked just like Yaakov. So that I'm relying on that medrash.
Yeah, but brothers can have similar characteristics.
Whatever.
It doesn't
Okay,
mean they're identical,
but obviously they were similar. Fraternal line, two different people. Anyway, but again, so therefore, how can two twins be so identical? Makes no sense. So that's also very difficult. And also, how did Yitzchak fall for him? It says there that he used to bring food for Yitzchak, and then he used to go and sin, So, how did Yitzchak get fooled by this? And Rivka saw right through him. So, how does Yitzchak get fooled by this? Yitzchak is Yitzchak, he's not the average guy. He has incredible, spiritual gifts. So how was he fooled? It's another question, Then we have the story, right? Avraham Avinu dies, Yitzchak is sitting Shiva. Yitzchak is sitting Shiva. In comes Yaakov, and Yaakov is preparing a lentil soup, bean soup, whatever it is, right? In comes Eisav, and he's white. He's Oyev. He's tired, right? So he says to Yaakov, hey, I'm starving. Maybe you want to give me some food? So what does Yaakov say? No problem. But we got to work out a deal. I mean, you're two brothers. Got to work out a deal. You want food? Deal first, food second. What's the deal? I want you to sell your birthright to me. Because in those days, the firstborn was the birthright. And the birthright was spiritual. The Bechor was expected to carry on the spiritual heritage, whatever that meant, of the family. So he says to his brother, I want you to sell that privilege to me, and then I'll give you a pot of beans. Okay, I'm not going into the fact there's a pot of beans worth the birthright. It's a different story. But how do you do this to your brother? If your brother came in, would you make a deal? Where's your compassion for your brother? You know what I'm saying? Go and look at this and say, well, there go the Jews again, so it's a deal. You know what I'm saying? I can, you can see this. So that's the question. They say, hey, this guy's your brother, and he's starving, and he comes in, you got to take away money from the guy, or birthright, what does this mean? And, like I said, it's his brother. How do you do this kind of stuff? And then when he said the language is interesting. It says, Michur kahayoim, sell me as this day, as b'choiroscha, your birthright to me. What do you mean, sell me as this day? But what is supposed to be, night? You should say, sell me your birthright. What do you mean, Michur kahayoim, sell me as this day? Problematic. What kind of language is that? And why did he do it? Why would Yaakov want to take away the birthright from his brother? It's a tremendous privilege. You know, what kind of selfishness is that? You know what I'm saying? If your brother was spiritually gifted, would you want to deny him that? You know what I'm saying? Why? And so on. And they were young guys, they were both 15 years old then. We're not talking about older people.
But Eisav would never use that spiritual gift.
We don't know.
All the waste. These Yaakov shoes.
We don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Who knows?
Hey, he killed somebody that day. So his brother's all about.
Okay. I can certainly give somewhat of an answer. But essentially, he wanted to make the deal and take away that, you know, and so on.
But how financial transaction would do it? I mean, it's a spiritual operation. What does it have to do with money? I mean, how do you do it altogether?
No, because the firstborn had the rights of the spiritual, whatever rituals, whatever mitzvahs were involved for ruch, like a kohen gadol, kohen.
But which is right. It's
Imagine I walk your
it's a special
kohen.
nishoma. There is something with the nishoma. It's not a matter of financial transaction to.
That's good, but apparently it's sellable. You can sell it. Apparently, or
And it switches over. Something happens over there.
Yeah, apparently you can sell. You can buy a privilege. I could buy your Elam Habo if you want to sell it. Right? So how can I sell a spiritual place? You can. You can sell Elam Habo. You want to pay? You want to buy it? I'll pay for it. Write you out a check. How's that sound? You wouldn't sell it.
Fine.
But you're not going to sell it, right?
It's the shiur.
Somebody sold you.
Oh, after the share.
Somebody sold you years of their life to Rabbi Elyashiv, right?
What?
Didn't somebody sell years of their life to Rabbi Elyashiv? Did you ever read about that?
No, that was a different story. It's an incredible story. And I knew
There's
this was.
something unusual about that.
I think I once told the story. Yeah, it was somebody. Incredible story. Yeah, I'll just tell you. There was once a very chashuv, very Chaim Brim. Chaim Brim was really a great man, very great man. His wife got sick, and she wasn't going to make it. She didn't know what to do, so he went. This is 1948, I think. So he went to the Rav of the city. He went to the Zvila Rebbe's son, Rav Gedalia Moshe. Was a miracle worker. So he goes over to him and he says, "Listen, my wife, forget it. I need a miracle." And he went to the Gedalia Moshe. Who was this big guy. So he told him, Rav Gedalia Moshe, "I can't do anything. It's just, he knew, forget it." So he didn't know what to do. So he left because he said, "He can't do anything." So he goes to the Rav of the city, Jerusalem. And he told him. So the Rav said, go to Rav Gedalia Moshe. So he said, "I went to him, but he said he can't do anything." So the Rav of Jerusalem says to him, "He told you he can't do anything? Go back to him and tell him that I am the chief rabbi of the city. I command him to save your wife." This is something, right? So what does he do? He went back to Gedalia Moshe, the Zvila Rebbe, So, what was he going to do? There's the tzivoy, the chief rabbi, It's just, he's going to perform a miracle, right? So he had no choice. What do you do? He had no choice. So he says, "Okay, listen to me." And they were bombing Jerusalem. Apparently it's in the 48 war. Go into a bomb shelter. You ever hear this story? No? Incredible story. Go into a bomb shelter and make an announcement. And this, everybody was running to the bomb because there were all bombs falling. Make an announcement that whoever gives 1 year of their life, tell them that I, Gedalia Moshe, guarantee that they will not die in this war. Guess what? Everybody ran over to the guy and said, "Okay, So he signed up. He signed up 50 names. Believe this?
Such a good marketing idea.
What?
Such a good marketing idea.
What a marketing idea. He signed up 50 names, 50 years. And they signed up, and he went back to Rav Gedalia Moshe and said, "Okay, that's it, What happened? 50 years, nobody who signed died, and his wife lived exactly 50 years, and she died. And we are dealing here with people who, this is not normal people, But anyway, it's like an incredible story, And he's buried in Jerusalem, and people go to his keva. And if you go 3 times to his keva, apparently you'll have a shiur. I know a lot of people go to his keva. What?
The outside is this week.
This year, what day? You know, could tell you much?
Maybe Monday.
For the cheshvan. Ah. Oh yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, I didn't get into that, but see that kind of story, But anyway, how do I get this story?
How did Rabbi Yasha come in?
Who? I don't know the story of Rabbi Yasha. Maybe he's referring to this.
When Rabbi Yasha was very sick, there was somebody there was an article in the paper that did something like that they did a long time ago. It was unusual, and he vowed to give like 1 year of his life.
And it worked.
And it did extend Rabbi Yasha's life.
Life, okay. Oh, because he was probably very sick, and
Yeah.
So you can trade off. You sell your life. You sell, and apparently it's legitimate. Whatever. But how do you get this?
To sell the bechor.
Yeah. So apparently it's you can sell whatever. Anyway. So we have these kind of questions, and so on. Then we go to the next part of the story, which is next week, and that's the part of the story that's the sale. That all of a sudden, Eisav is about, Yitzchak is blind, and Yitzchak says, I want to give you guys blessings, and I want, he goes towards Eisav, I want to give you a blessing, I want you to go out and hunt me some deer, bring it to me, I'll eat it, and on that I will give you blessings. And this is incredible. Come on. Yitzchak Avinu is going to give blessings. You see? So what does Eisav do? No problem. He goes out and hunts whatever and so on and so forth. Of course, Rivka gets wind of this, and she says, oh no. So she disguises Yaakov, because Yitzchak was blind, puts on a hairy goat skin, whatever, and Yitzchak, Yakov Avinu stands for Yitzchak, and he's going to fool his father. He makes believe he's Eisav, and the father says, suspects and so on. And ultimately, it happens and so on. There's a lot of problems with this story. What are the problems? The first problem, if you take a look at those blessings, they're incredible blessings. They are physical blessings. They're not spiritual. You will take from the dew of heaven. They're physical. You will be successful physically. Parnasa, there's no spirituality really in those blessings. So the question is why? What's the nature of that? Second of all, why was it so important for Rivka to give it to Yaakov? I mean, Eisav is her son. Why do this? Third of all, when Yitzchak found out that he was deceived by Yaakov, right? It says in the Torah, "Vayechrad Yitzchak charod gedolo ad mi'oid," and all of a sudden he had a sense of unbelievable fear. Ad mi'oid, exceedingly fearful. Let me ask something. If somebody took you for a ride, right? They really deceived you, right? And especially this kind of stuff where you want to, somebody stole somebody's blessing, This blessing, I want to tell you something. A blessing by Yitzchak, it's better than a CD in a bank. It's going to happen. It's like Gedalia Moshe. And Yitzchak is infinitely greater than Gedalia Moshe. You know what I'm saying? It's going to happen. I mean, you go to a bank with this and cash it in. I mean, it's, any bank would give you a loan because it's because it's, because, it's going to happen so you can pay us back. So the question is this. So if somebody deceived you, what would the normal emotion be?
Anger.
Who?
Anger. Rage.
Not anger. Livid with rage. How in the world can this person fool? Yitzchak should have been incredibly angry. Instead, what was Yitzchak? He was frightened. Why? You don't find he was enraged. You find he was frightened. You see. So the question is why? Why was he frightened? And it doesn't say just frightened, exceedingly frightened. Why? And then what happens? So in comes Eisav, and he says, "Okay, I'm here." So Yitzchak says to him, "Who are you?" He says, "Who am I? I'm Eisav, your son, and I'm here for the blessing." So Yitzchak says to him, "Oh no," and that's when the fear was, right? And he realizes, So what does he do? So he says, "I have nothing for you." Why? Why didn't he have anything for him? Tzaddik. Tzaddikim or Rebbe sit all day and give blessings. They don't say, "I'm sorry, I ran out of them." You ever hear a Rebbe saying that?
Bad for business.
What was that?
It
It was very bad for business, exactly. So you kidding. Nobody's going to go to a Rebbe if you can't give you a blessing. What's the point here? So why couldn't he give a blessing to Eisav? What's the problem here? And the next idea is, so what's the blessing he gives him? He says, if Yaakov will be a bad boy, you can take care of him. What kind of blessing is that? If Yaakov doesn't do his job, you can beat him up. Do you ever hear such a blessing from a parent to a kid? You can beat up your brother. There's something very bizarre here that we don't know. You know what I'm saying? Then Rivka says, "Okay, you got to get out of here because Esav's after you, right?" And what happens? And then it says, and he went, therefore he left. So it says in the next parsha, Vayetze, right? And that's what we're up to. And that again, they've told us that Yaakov left. He went. Why? It says Vayetze Yaakov mi Beersheba, and Yaakov left Beersheba. Vayelech Harana, and he went to Haran. Haran? Was it Haran? Yeah, I'm doing this one on Chumash. So like so what? We know he left Beersheba, and we know he went to Haran. Like what's the information here? So Rashi wants to say, because when a tzaddik leaves a city, what happens? Then the whole spiritual climate of the city diminishes. You see? So when it says Yaakov went to Beersheba, Haran, Beersheba lost out. Haran got in. That's what Rashi says. But the question is still there. Like, so what? Why is this information so important? And so on. Anyway, so what happens? Yaakov is on his way to Haran, or wherever, right? And all of a sudden he lies down, and he has this dream. Angels are going up, and angels are coming down, and God speaks to him in the dream. The question is, what's this business of angels going up and angels going down? What is this? It's like an escalator. You're going up, and then they did their business up there, and then going down. There's got to be more to it, So the Rosh appears to him and says, "Listen, I will protect you." He uses several expressions of protection. I will guard you and protect you, and so on and so forth. So why does there have to be such a guarantee of protection? This is the question. Fine. So he goes to the house of Lavan, and Lavan is an incredible character. He's one of the most deceitful people who ever lived. So he goes there and he says to, and he begins and he says, "Okay, I'm here. Let me work for you." And he works for him for 7 years. And what does he do? He winds up marrying Rachel and Leah. You know what I'm saying? Marries Rachel and Leah. Why would he marry two women? Why should he marry Rachel and Leah? Hey, you want to marry somebody? Fine. But Rachel deceived him. Leah deceived, you see. Because he really wanted to marry Rachel. And he worked 7 years for her. You know what I'm saying? And all of a sudden, Rachel, which is incredible, says to Leah, "He's going to marry me, and you're going to be a broken-hearted woman." Because everybody thought she would marry Eisav. Rachel would marry Yaakov, and Leah would marry Eisav. So Rachel says to her, with tremendous compassion. So Rachel says, that Yaakov knows that Lavan is going to switch. Yaakov's, he knows what kind of character Lavan is. So he gave Rachel a password that when they get married and they come home under, it's dark, whatever, give me the password, I know it's you, and whatever, then we're married. So, So what does Rachel do? Rachel gives the password to Leah. It's incredible. Why would she do that? Why would she do something? Because imagine Yaakov finds out what Rachel did. Yes? He's going to drop her. Because she's a conspiracy. You imagine you are engaged to marry a woman. Then you find out that your wife or your future wife is a conspirator for you to marry somebody else on the same night. What would you do with the collar? You'd walk over to the father-in-law and say, take her back. I don't want her. How can I trust her? You know what I'm saying? Why would she do that? And not only that, why would he marry... Then he said, okay, so he married Leah. Why didn't he divorce her? They were getting in those days. What's the big deal? You married a wrong woman. You're not interested in Leah. You divorce her. You move on. And so on.
Because he knew Yosef would come out of her. He needed Yosef.
Out of who? Leah?
Rachel.
No, why didn't he divorce Leah and then just marry Rachel again? Could have done that. You know what I'm saying? Then he works and so on. And he works for another 7 years, 14 years. And all of a sudden, when Yosef is born, he says, okay, I'm out of here. And it says, Vayhi kashe yolad Rachel es Yosef, is when Rachel married Yosef, had Yosef, then Yaakov comes over and said, okay, I'm out of here. Why then? What does it mean then? And so on. You see. Then we have that Yaakov leaves Lavan. He's going to meet Eisav. He's going to meet Eisav. So what does he do? Eisav is in Russia, and Eisav all of a sudden, and he sends out angels to find out what's Eisav going to do. So all of a sudden the angels, the Macham come back and say, hey, he's coming to kill you with 400 guys. So Yaakov is of course petrified, and he has this whole plan, and so on. And then we find that when Eisav comes back, he doesn't kill him, he kisses him. Not only does he kiss him, he says, Yehilucha sheloch. And Rashi says that Eisav said to Yaakov, listen, you have the birthright, you can keep it. Why would Eisav do that? If he's coming to kill him, it's because Yaakov deceived him. So what is this change of heart? Right? You can keep it. What did he all of a sudden had an epiphany? Something like that? That I don't need this? He's coming with 400 guys to kill the man. You see, why was this change of heart? And not only that, if you think that's problematic, Yaakov, right, takes Dinah and hides her because he's afraid that Eisav is going to see Dinah, right? And he's going to say, I want to marry Dinah. And Yaakov, he don't want to give her. You know what I'm saying? He don't want to give her to Eisav. And he doesn't. He hides her in a chest. And all of a sudden, there's a divine voice. The Medrash says, it's Basco. And God says, what do you mean you don't want to give it to Eisav? Because you didn't want to give it to Eisav, she's going to be taken forcibly by Shem. Wow. Would you give your daughter away, right, to the head of the mafia? No, I don't think so. Come on, the guy's a mafioso, right? Would you marry off your daughter to Carlo Gambino? He's dead already. Who's the head of the New York Mafia and so on. Of course not. So how could the Moshe have kindness to Yaakov? I mean, what is this? It's beyond belief. You see. Anyway, there's a lot of questions. Simple questions that say that the story is incredible. I'm going to stop the questions here because I want to go into the answer. Because I'm going to stop by Yosef. The whole concept of why the brothers hated him makes no sense. Want to kill the guy? Why? Because he bragged? So what? Let him brag. So what? Does he kill you? I mean, if your brother comes over and says, I had a dream. What was the dream? You all bow down to me. Okay? Slaughter him. Kill him. Come on, I mean, there's violence, and there's, but this does not make sense. Okay, so he has problems. What do you do when a kid has problems? Send to a therapist. You find yourself a good psychotherapist and check it out. I'm sure they had some good guys in where they lived and so on. Anyway, so why do you want to kill the guy? Anyway, so I'll put that story aside. And then Yosef got out of prison, which itself unbelievable. Anyway, I'll put Yosef aside. Let's go back to Yakov and Eisav. I'm trying to understand what's going on here. The story is profound. The real story is a story that hardly anybody knows, as you will see. And the real story answers everything. It's not a patch job. It answers it beautifully. Of course, the problem is you need access to the hidden story. And without that, everything else makes no sense. So the question is, what's the real story? Okay? That's what we have to figure out. What's the underlying theoretical construct? What is really going on? For that, you have to know the divine plan. You see, the problem is, when people learn Chumash, they don't know what the divine plan is. Basically, to them, it's just a bunch of narratives. It's nice, but Chumash is more than just learning the proper character traits, midas. You know what I'm saying? Chumash is the ongoing attempt of man to rectify creation. And each of these stories is nothing more than a part of that. It's not just we learn character traits, proper behavior from Chumash. It's infinitely greater than that, because each story of Bereshis or Shmois or whatever is nothing more than an attempt to rectify creation, to bring God closer, and so on. So the question is, what does that mean? Moshe, there's a chair. What is the real story? The real story is this. Then you understand the real theme. The problem all starts with Adam Rishon, the first man. What's the job of Adam Rishon, really? Was to ignore evil, to ignore the Satan. The mouthpiece of the Satan is the snake, right? The primordial snake. You need to avoid this, because if you avoid it, right, then that's it. You ignore the Satan, his advice, and if Adam Rishon would have done that, he would have been Mashiach. That's who he really was. And he would have ushered in the Messianic era by himself, right? And then the whole world would have been rectified and so on. Instead, what did Adam do? He believed the Satan, right? Actually, he believed Chava. Chava's the one who took the argument and so on, But anyway, he believed the Satan. He bought into the argument, and so on, and he ate from the tree. So the problem was that the relationship between evil and the world changed. Until then, the Satan had no ability to tempt you. He was external to the physical universe. You see, it's external. So therefore, he existed, but in order to convince you to do a sin, he had to convince you outside, talk to you. When Adam did the sin, the Satan entered the mind of man. It was the Malach, until then, had to use a mouthpiece external to man, the snake. Once you sin, he dispensed with the serpent, and he's now connected to you in your mind, your psyche. You now carry around the Satan as the Yetzer Hara. In other words, the angel is like an octopus. He now can grab you spiritually and influence you within your own mind. You see. So therefore the problem is this, and it's not just you. He grabbed the universe, and that's why man dies. That's what the Bereshit said. On the day you eat this, you will die. Why? Because you will have introduced evil, or the satanic influence, which by the way is called Zoyama, pollution, and that will enter the universe. What is a Satan's main job? to tempt. But the Satan is a demolition expert. All he wants to do is destroy. That's his job, is destruction. So if he enters the universe, then all of a sudden, everything dies. Physics recognizes a law called the second law of thermodynamics. It's interesting. What is that law? That all energy systems deteriorate. If you leave something hot on the table and you come back 2 hours later, it's cold. Why? Because the energy dissipates. It's cold. What it means is that order always leads to disorder. You see. Why? And that's found in all matter. It's found in inanimate objects, heat, right? And it's found in life. The ultimate decomposition of a person is death. Why does a person die? Because of the zoyama in the guf. That's why a person dies. I always like to say, what do you call a composer who dies? A decomposer. Anyway, but that's what it's all about. Why is there decomposition, deterioration? Because of the zoyama. If you remove the zoyama from the physical universe, we would live forever. And that's what the Mashim said to Adam. The problem is if you sin, you will have brought into his argument, Mida Keneged Mida, you will have brought him into the physical universe, and therefore he will therefore have power over the physical universe. That's a second law of thermodynamics, and therefore you will decompose, you will die.
There's no way to clean out the Zohar before.
Oh, wait. You understand? It's amazing to think that you actually have a physics law based on Hashkafa. Interesting. But there's a lot of laws that are based on Hashkafa. There's matter and antimatter. Why is there matter and antimatter? Because there's a Kedusha and there's Tumah. That's why. The physical universe mirrors the spiritual. Anyway, so therefore the problem is the Satan. You gotta get rid of this guy. You have to get rid of his power, you see. Therefore, there are two fundamental jobs that Adam created. One is called, you need to get rid of the Satan, you need to clean up the place, get rid of the garbage, and then you can go and decorate. If you walk and rent the house, right, and the house is what? The house, you walk in, the previous tenant left all his furniture, right? So what's the problem here? You can't decorate the house, you got to get rid of the guy's furniture. There are two jobs. One is called removal of the furniture, that's called tahara. And then the other thing is to bring kedusha, bring in holiness. Therefore, the Chet of Adam Rishon brought two things. One was he brought satanic influence over the physical universe, as manifested by a physical law. So the first thing you have to do is get rid of the tumah. Then you could bring in the kedusha. Therefore, Adam Rishon's sin created two avodas, two jobs.
Why Satan is interested in destruction? I mean, he wants to tempt, it's understandable. But destruction, why does he need destruction? Who cares about destruction? Let him just tempt without destroying anything. What does that have to do with his goal, with his tachlis?
Very good question. The only problem is to take me astray. Because I have to go a whole different direction.
Mm-hmm.
So, Anyway, so therefore, the first avodah is called kfiyah surah, tachas kedusha. You need to subjugate the Satan underneath kedusha. You need to enslave the guy, get rid of him. The second avodah or task is called Parshas kedusha. You need to bring down holiness, which is what Adam should have done. You see, so there are now two avodas in Klal Yisrael. You see, now that's the case. Therefore, you'll notice that all Jews do two things. You are either involved in holy matters, or you are involved in defilement matters. There are those guys who are Rosh Hashivas, and they give shurim all day. They give shurim all day. It's incredible. They give shurim, Rebbes, they daven all day or whatever they do. They're involved in holy matters. Then there's those guys that got to walk on Wall Street. They have to avoid all the temptations. These guys are trying to do what? Abstain from sinning. A Rebbe has to worry about how much Kedusha will he bring down? How much spirituality is he going to do? A guy in Wall Street has to worry about, how do I avoid contaminating my soul? Or 47th Street, or whatever you want to learn. And you notice that there's always a division. Why? Because the guys involved in Wall Street, the greater they remove the temptation, then the Satan grows weak, you see. However, in terms of the Kedusha, the holiness, when a guy does a mitzvah, whatever, then he brings in a certain amount of holiness into the world. Okay? Now,
taking away the kedusha that the Satan had stolen from us is called removing Zoyhama, or it's called bringing kedusha to the world?
which one? To remove from the...
To remove what the Satan had stolen, the kedusha,
That's tahara. That's removing his power.
that's removing his power.
Yeah, exactly. In any case, so the Jewish people or who took over the job of Adam Rishon are involved in both of these tasks. And now we begin to understand. How many of us are there really? Most people will say 3, right? But then I would say, how many imors are there? How many matriarchs are there? And the answer is 4. Why? Why are there 3 of us and 4 imors? And the answer is, there are 4 of us. They're not 3, they're 4. Who are they? Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, and Eisav. Eisav is an Ov. Shocking. The Ramchal says that Eisav was a patriarch. He wasn't a mere mortal. He was an incredible patriarch. He had the neshama, the same neshama as Yaakov. What does that mean? So here's the way they divide it. Avram Avinu represents a certain trait called chesed. For those who are familiar, there's chesed, there's gevura, and tiferes. So Avram Avinu represents kindness or chesed. Yitzchak represents gevura or strength, the ability to control oneself. But then you have the middle meter called tiferes, which is beauty. But the interesting is every middle has 2 sides, the right of the middle and the left of the middle, correct? So therefore what happened was this. Avram Avinu represents chesed, Yitzchak represents gvura. The right side of Tiferes was Yaakov, and the left side was Eisav. There you are. So since Yaakov and Eisav represented by the same sphera, they are twins. That's why they're twins. Because they both emanate from the middle sphere of Tiferes. It's astounding. That's why we begin to understand why they looked alike. Because they're really of us, and they're both twins. But there was a difference in jobs. What does the Torah call Yakov Avinu? Yoshivei Holam. He used to sit in the tents and learn. Why? Because he was the right side of Tiferes, and that job is bring down the Kedusha. The left side of Tiferes, the Torah says, is what? Ishoda, man of the field. Why? Because his job is to go into the field, into the tumah, into the Satan's hotel, and remain from, thereby depleting the Satan of the energy he took from the Jews, or from Adam Rishon, whatever. You see? What a difference. Each one is an Ov, but they're incredibly powerful. Yaakov is right side, Kedusha, so he's learning all day. Eisav is what? He's an Ov, but his job is to destroy the Satan. That's his job. And in fact, the only way to destroy the Satan is he has to be spiritually connected to the Satan. That's why we find that the Malach of Eisav is the Satan. So therefore, he could destroy him. But here's the gamble. If you don't destroy him, and you sin, then he will dominate you. The Satan becomes your Malach. That's the flip side. Bad news. But okay, but the risk is you can wipe him out. Eisav could have killed the Satan. In fact, the amazing thing is that who was greater, Yaakov or Eisav? It's an interesting question. Had Eisav done his job, who would have been greater? Interesting question, you know? Okay, we know Eisav bombed. Yeah, that's it, he failed. Terrible. But what happens if he would have been a tzaddik? He would have been an Ov. He was an Ov. If he would have done his job, who would have been greater? Him or Yaakov? You know what the answer is? Eisav. There's a Rishon that's called the Paneach Roza. It's a Rishon. He wrote an interesting thing. He said that if you look at the gematria, the numerical value of Eisav, it is twice the numerical value of Yaakov. Why? Because the power of Eisav was twice as great as Yaakov. You believe this? Amazing, isn't it? That the koyach of Eisav is twice as great as Yaakov Avinu. In fact, the Medrash says that had Eisav not sinned, then Yaakov would have had 6 shvatim, and Eisav would have had 6 shvatim. Believe this? Astounding. Because that's really what it was. The problem is that the story of Eisav is a story of an Ov that failed. That's really what the story is. And what does God do to compensate for this? It's terrible. Because you need 4 of us. And you need Yaakov and Eisav. But if an Eisav doesn't do his job, what do? So the story of Yaakov and Eisav, which begins Toldos, is a story of an Ov that failed, and what did God do to solve the problem? Interesting story.
So going back a little bit, in the embryos, when Eisav was struggling when they went by Avodah Zarah, was that because he wanted to tangle with Avodah Zarah, or he wanted to subjugate himself to it?
Good.
Because we're thinking when he's in a struggle, he's bad already from the get-go.
So therefore, we have to assume that what the embryos had, it's not that Eisav as an embryo wanted to worship idols, but he was given incredible tendency. You know, some guys are born, as soon as they bust out, they're fuming. They're enraged. There's some kids, you can't believe this guy. This guy's always angry. Then there's some kids that are so docile, whatever you want, yes, mommy, what would you want? We all pray for those kind of kids. But the real idea is that, people are born with what's called proclivities or tendencies. That's called temperament. Personality is a learned thing. Temperament is inborn. Eisav was born, that's what it means. They're struggling. What do you mean they're struggling? It's not that they're struggling. You really think they're fighting in the uterus there? You bow. What's this? What is this? The gorilla from Manila? What is this? Muhammad Ali? It's not this stuff. We're talking about their tendencies. That Eisav has this incredible tendency for evil. That's his Eitzahara. Yaakov's tendency was to learn Torah. Why? Because that was their job. Yaakov would see, how much is Yaakov learning today? Is he learning 15 hours a day? Or he's learning 3 and having coffee the rest? That's his problem. Eisav is, how much evil is he doing today? You see. And therefore they're born with 2 different tendencies. And that's why they're twins. Because they're both from the meat of Tiferes. You see. Now, you're going to ask me and say, wait a minute, how do you know? How are you going to tell me that Eisav had this incredible personality that he could withstand the Satan? You realize what that means? The Satan is your angel? How do you withstand that kind of thing? You're going to tell me that Eisav had the power to stand by? Could he have beaten the Satan? That's a $64,000 question. That's an old show that used to have. For those who remember the $60,000, this is in the 50s. And I will prove to you that Eisav could have beaten the Satan. He could have beaten the evil and been an unbelievable tzaddik. I will prove it to you. Want to hear the proof? Anybody have proof?
The head.
The head. Good. The head of Eisav was incredible. The body, different story. There's not that the head is not the proof, it's the potential. What's the proof? You know what the proof is? Very interesting. What was the greatest mitzvah that Eisav did? We know. Torah says, keep it over aim. There's a Tan in the Gemara, Rav Shimon Gamliel. Yeah. So he said a very interesting thing. He said, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel said, who was one of the great Tanoim, that I am the greatest man in Kibbutz Ova'in in my generation. However he knew that, I don't know. But he said, but my uncle Eisav beat me. How? Before Eisav would go to visit his father Yitzchak, he would change his clothing into his Shabbos clothing. Who does that? Because of the honor of his father. This man was incredible in Kibbutz Ova'in. By the way, that's our problem. That is our problem. In fact, it is such a problem for us that Yaakov, who didn't do the same Kibbutz as Eisav, had to be denied his son because he didn't serve his father, Yaakov, Yitzchak, for 22 years because he was learning, he was in the house of Lavan. Therefore, his punishment was to remove the sin of Kibbutz Ova'in. His punishment that he would be denying his son for 22 years, measure for measure. I mean, this is incredibly severe. That's part of the reason why Yosef was gone for 22 years. That's a kapora for Yaakov, because he didn't serve his father, and that's why we have so many problems. But Eisav was incredible. Let me ask you something. A person who is evil, what's the greatest midah he has? Arrogance. People who are evil are incredibly arrogant. Yes? If you're an arrogant person, you think you're God's gift. Which mitzvah is the most difficult mitzvah to observe? Kibbutz. Because Kibbutz means to submit to somebody else. You ever see kids who are arrogant, how they talk to their father? That's the arrogance. But Eisav, who had such a gaiva, it says there, Vayivas Eisav is Abechur, Eisav despised the first birthright. What are you looking at here? What arrogance of a person. Who needs it? Excuse me, this is God's gift to you. So take a guy like that because he's an evil person. Evil people are megalomaniacs or egocentrics. That's what they are. Because, hey, get out of my way. I want this. You're in my way? Bang, bang. That's what it's all about. These guys have no humility. They'll kill you, you see. So if Eisav was evil and he killed people, I mean, we're not talking here, why would he be so submissive to his father? Because that's the power of Eisav. When he wanted to, he could be incredibly submissive and humble. If he wanted to. When he doesn't want to, get out of his way. But that shows you. Well, the Eitzara also told him, hey, don't do this to your father. Yet, when he wanted to, he could knock out this Satan in that mitzvah. When he didn't want to, forget it. It was just all over, That shows the power of this man. That he was the greatest man almost who ever lived in Kibbutz Ova'in. Yet that's the most difficult mitzvah for a man who is an incredible Rasha. Interesting. That to me is proof of what he could have done. So, and God knew what he was doing. But the job of Eisav was the job to destroy the son. You see. And now we understand something. What's Eisav doing? Eisav is not doing mitzvahs. He's sinning. In fact, the Mendel says that Avraham Avinu lived to 100 and what? 175. Why? Because Eisav turned 15 on the day he died. So the Hashem said, he promised Avram that you will die in a good age, you won't see the tsaras. But he it's what Yaakov, what Avram did, he died he should live to 180 like Yitzchak. He died 5 years earlier. Why? So he shouldn't see the evil of Eisav. So on the day that Eisav comes in for the beans, the deal with the Bechorah, was the day of that Avram died. Now we understand something incredible. So Yaakov Avinu looked at his brother and he saw the evil. He knew. So he said, wait a minute, you have the power of an Av. That means when you do a sin, you destroy half the universe. We don't realize what the neshama of an Av is. Every day of an Av's life is beyond belief. When they sin, they wipe out half the universe because they're connected to half the universe. So that's why Yaakov said, I need to get the Bechorah away from Eisav so he loses his power of Tikkun and Kilkun. Because if you can bring rectification or tikkun, you can destroy the bria. And the greater your neshama, the greater the destruction. So he says, I got to get this stuff out of here. That's why when Eisav came in, he said, wait a minute. I got to get this stuff. I got to get him to sell his bechira, or he's going to wipe out the bria. Because he's enough. And that's why, where do we see this? In one word, hayoim. Sell me as today. Because today we see what you did. Our grandfather, Avram, died because you sinned. Do you know what it is to deny 5 years of life to Avram Avinu? How many mitzvahs Avram Avinu would have done in those 5 years? And how much tikkun he would have done to creation? So because Eisav was evil, 15, right? And that's when he went public, right? Avram would have seen that. So the Moshe took him away not to see the evil of Eisav. But that means he denied Avram Avinu 5 years of the avodah, of the work of a tzaddik. Why? Because of Eisav. So that's what Yaakov says. Sell me as today, because today we see what you have, what power you have in destruction. You killed Avram Avinu. Sell me the bechira. So that one word, hayoim, the Torah tells us what was going on. It's not that Yaakov Avinu wanted the bechira, because he was jealous. Of course not. He had to take it away from him, because Eisav was an Ov. He had that unbelievable neshama, and the neshama of an Ov can wipe out if he sins. Is much greater than a Jew who sins. Much greater, a regular Jew, because the neshama is much greater. Wow, what a difference! It's incredible what this man did, and he all reveals it in the word hayoim, because today Avram Avinu died because of you, and therefore I need to take away the power away from you. I need you to sell this stuff. You see, because really, what's going on? You see, is Yaakov is in his Parshas Kedusha. His job is to learn, and Esav's job is to destroy the Satan. So therefore Yaakov had to take away the Bechira to save the world, to save the universe actually.
So now Yaakov got Esav's job too?
Oh wait, we now know that Eisav doesn't have his job anymore. You see, what's about to happen? He's 63 years old, and Yitzchak is going to give Eisav the blessing, which means he's going to reconfer on Eisav the power of Ov. Wow, this is no good. You know, the world has been safe from this guy for what? For 48 years? And Yitzchak, whatever, he's about to reconfer the blessings on Eisav, which means that what? That he would have the power again of an Ov. And that's why those blessings were physical, because his job is to interact with the Satan in a physical world, because the Satan tempts you physically. So the blessings were physical, that you should rule over. You should be able to subjugate or rechannel your physical abilities to destroy the Satan. Now Yitzchak was going to give him the power again.
Did Yitzchak know that his power from Alpha was taken away?
No.
So then why would he give him brachos that would reinstate him?
Because that would permanently give him the brachos. Yitzchak was going to die. And the truth is, Yitzchak was the same level as Eisav. The job of Yitzchak was to destroy the Satan. That's why Yitzchak loved Eisav so much. The Zohar says, Yoev zin lezinei, birds of a feather flock together. That's what it means, you know. The reason why Yitzchak loved Eisav is because the job of Yitzchak was gevura, to destroy the Satan, and the job of Eisav was to destroy the Satan. That's why he loved Eisav so much.
So he's really solidifying his...
And now I wanted, exactly. But Rivka realized, hey, wait a minute. You're unaware of this. So she knew that at all costs, she has to get it away from Eisav and give it to Yaakov. Interesting. So what happens? So he gives it to Yaakov, right? And then Yaakov gets out. And in comes Eisav. And Eisav says, hey, here I am, Dad. And Yitzchak says, who are you? And there was already something bad going on. As soon as here I am, Hineni, all all of a sudden, Yitzchak immediately realized that, whoa, remember Yitzchak is blind. He says, who are you? I'm your son Eisav. And what did Yitzchak realize? He realized that God made sure. Why was Rivka successful? Because why did the Russia make Yitzchak blind? So this can happen. Because if Eisav would have gotten the brachas, Eisav would have been an Ov, and guess what? We would have been wiped out. So the Russia made sure that Yitzchak is blind, right? So Yitzchak won't see. And he made sure that Rivka would know, and Yaakov would get the bracha. He gave incredible siyata d'shmaya. So Yitzchak realized that the only reason why Yaakov got the blessing because God did it. Yitzchak wasn't. He said, "Well, wow, they fooled me. They didn't fool me. The Rebbeinu Shalom fooled me. Why? Because these guys could never have been successful if it wasn't divinely ordained. These things don't just have to happen, Wow, what luck that Yaakov got the brachas. What a fool I was. No, we're talking about an off here. Everything that happens is ordained. And if this happened, if Yaakov was able to get these type of blessings, right, then it means that the Rebbeinu would fool Yitzchak. It means that this was the plan of God. And then all of a sudden Yitzchak realized, wait a minute, why would God want this? Because clearly Eisav is bad news. And he realized, if Eisav gets the blessings, there goes half the universe. You know what kind of fear that is? That's why he wasn't angry. He wasn't angry because he knew the Moshe was behind it. But what did he experience? Fear, because he realized, imagine a guy pressed the button for the atomic bomb to go off, and all of a sudden it didn't work, and he thought there was a reason. But once he finds out that no, the other country didn't send the bomb to you, it's a mistake. And the guy realizes, boy, if that switch had worked, there goes half the planet. Russia and the United States, if I would have pressed the button. And the whole thing was based on a mistake. Could you imagine? This guy's gonna, right? For days, for weeks. He came close to destroying the world. That's what Yitzchak realized. He came close. If it wasn't for God and his assistance to Rivka and Yaakov, Yitzchak would have destroyed the planet by giving Eisav back his powers and Ov. And that's why it says, incredible, by Yechrad Yitzchak, and he frightened, Charod Gedoylo, an enormous fright, ad mi'oid. You know what it is? It means that he would have to take, anti-anxiety pills for years.
But if Eisav gave it up once, why would he want it back? I mean, he just didn't want it. What happened?
You think Eisav cared? He didn't care about it. He wanted the glory. He wanted the riches.
So why did he give it up to begin with?
It's the old story. Everybody wants the money. They don't want to do the work, right? The bechor is the work. The brachas are the reward. That you will be blessed. That you'll make a fortune in money. You will be able to have tremendous physical success, and you will be able to channel holiness. That's the reward. Who doesn't want the reward? It's the old story, The bechorah means you got to do the job. The brachas is the take-home pay. Yeah. That's why it was. You see how incredibly what the story is. This isn't the story you read. It's a whole different storyline. But look how it all makes sense. And therefore, here's the problem, right? Yitzchak realized, not only I almost destroyed the Bria, but here's the problem, who's going to do Esav's job? It's over. So that's why Yitzchak called Yaakov back, and he said, you have Esav's job. You're going piggyback. You have your job, and now you need to take over his job.
When did he call him back?
And that's why he reconfirmed the blessings to Yaakov. He reconfirmed them. So wait a minute. Imagine he reconfirmed the guy who stole the blessings. Yeah, you had to, because he realized the real story. So therefore, he said, "You are the one that has to."
When did he do it? When did he do it?
What?
When did he do it? When did he call him back?
Right in the same Parshas, in the end of Toldos. He called him back, and he blessed him.
Again?
Again. What he did is reconfirm the blessings he gave. But why would he do that? And the answer is because he realized what he almost did. So all of a sudden, wow, look what's happening. Yaakov now has two jobs. Incredible. He has his old job of Kedusha. He has a new job of what? Of Eisav's job. And that's why it says, Vayelech, right? Yaakov, and he went to Haran. He left Beersheba, and he took over the job of Eisav. And guess what? If you take over the job of Eisav, where do you have to go? Into the evil. Because now you got to do the job. You need to become the Ish Sodeh. Right? Where is the Ish Sodeh located? Lavan. That's it. It's incredible what's going on here. He took over the job of Eisav. Therefore, you now need to go into the pits. You need to deal with the Sultan. Well, why don't I deal with that? I need to go to Lavan. That's where the Sultan is. You see? And that's why he went. You see? That's the real reason. That's why the Torah connects leaving Beersheba and going to Haran. Because the reason why he went to Beersheba isn't because he wasn't running away from Eisav, because he took over the job of Eisav. Therefore he had to go to Haran.
The whole thing with the sheep, taking the tzotzos away from the sun, that's why he was so marked about the sheep, getting all the sheep?
Well, the sheep was written in the Shamas of Klal Yisrael, believe it or not. So he was, taking them
Is it
all.
like a sort of a thing of taking the Kedusha away from the sun?
Yes, that's right, yeah. And you know where you really see this? The dream. He had angels going up and angels going down. Because there's two things, two jobs. There's where angels go up into Kedusha, and there's where angels go down into Tumah. One job is to bring Kedusha down, and the other job is to go down into the depths of the Satan, win, and destroy the Satan. So he sees it. The original job was angels going up, and now the job is angels going down, which means you are going down. You are going to descend into the Satan's lair. You got to wipe this guy out by being a tzaddik. See, and guess what? What's the reward of all this? Because Rachel was supposed to marry Yaakov, and Leah was supposed to marry Eisav. Well, you took over the job of Eisav, you get his wife. Because Leah is a perfect consort to Eisav. If Eisav had been a tzaddik, she was his consort. A zivuk isn't just a woman; it's your team. It's your other half of you that has to do the same job. So since Leah was the wife of Eisav, Leah would have been the consort or the team of Eisav. But if Eisav is no longer around to do that job and is given up to Yaakov, Yaakov needs to marry Leah.
And we say that Leah would have the ability to help Eisav.
Why was it only
Yeah, that's why she was Leah's consort.
How do we see that? If anything, we see she davened a lot, but she's more Yaakov's.
Well, she davened a lot because she found out that Eisav that's why she davened. She realized, hey, I was born to marry Eisav, and my husband just checked out. What am I going to do? I'm finished. Because I can't marry somebody else. My neshama is to help Eisav. And if he's out of here, who am I going to marry? Right? So the Baruch made sure that she would marry Yaakov. Unbeknownst to Yaakov, he didn't know this.
And Rachel realized it? Because obviously no.
It's a good question if Rachel realized it or not. It's a good question.
She didn't just have Rachmanus on sister, it makes no sense.
No, she did.
No,
Rachel did
by that
is beyond imagination. Because she jeopardized the whole status of Klal Yisrael. Because a normal husband would have said, are you crazy? You the conspirator to marry another woman? Right? See you around. Go back to your father. So, and what that would have meant is that Rachel would not have been there in Amos. That's the end of matriarch. You realize what that is? And they knew what it was. This is the future of Klal Yisrael. This is the whole reason for the creation. And if you're gone because you deceived your husband, which is what she did, she was risking everything because she had compassion on her sister. Yeah, but that saved the Jewish people. You realize that? Because when they were in exile in Babylon, right, they were the destruction of the first temple, and they were all going up to Babylon, and they passed Rachel's kever, right, and they cried for Rachel, and the famous Haftorah, which is Rachel Mavako Baneo, Rachel cries for her children. The Jewish people are considered the children of Rachel. So there's an incredible medrash where the medrash says that, the Jewish people are going to exile, and everybody's going crazy. So they called out what's called the hit team. They called out Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov. All of them were pleading to God that the exile should not last a long time, because the gzera was, it's over with. And everybody failed. Nobody could convince the din, the judgment. You see, and each one said, what do you mean, and this and that. Nobody could overturn the judgment. Nobody. Except Rachel. Why? Because Rachel came in front of the judgment. What'd she say? She said, listen, I didn't have to give Rachel the password. Leah the password. I didn't have to do this. But I went lifnim mishus adin. I went beyond the measure of justice. Because I didn't have to do this. There was no obligation to give away my husband to my sister, But I didn't look at that. I didn't look at the jealousy. So she said to God, if I was able to go beyond the measure of justice, you do that too. So throw out justice and do mercy. And God said, you're right. So it comes out an incredible thing. Because she did that, the Jews were saved from, so the decree was changed from forever to 70 years. Hey, and all because she had that compassion. You see, we don't know how far this goes. We don't know how, when a Jew does an act of chesed or achmanas, we have no idea how far it goes. So one act of kindness that she did to Leah, her sister, it saved the Jewish people. That's why it says, Rachel Mavaka al Boneo. She was the one who saved the Jewish people. And therefore they're all called her children. Not Leah, Rachel. Amazing. What one act can do for the entire population of the Jewish people. Amazing when you think about that. Who knows what one act of chesed does, or one act of rahmanas does. But in any case, so now Yaakov marries Leah because he took over Esav's job. Of course, he didn't know that, right? But God knows that, and God says, just leave it up to me. I'm going to arrange things where, and that's what God does. He arranges this, and he arranged what happened to, by Yitzchak, that Yitzchak gave the blessings to Eisav. It's all God. In the end, God runs the world absolutely and totally. And we think, come on, God gave me a little leeway here, right? What leeway? You have leeway to decide, but you do not have leeway what to do. All actions are from God. The decisions are sometimes from man. Sometimes. Yeah. So, So what do we see? God is the orchestra. He's leading the concert. You can't play your instrument unless the conductor taps on you, right? Same thing. God's the the lead, the orchestra lead, The conductor. If he taps, there it goes. Same thing, And you see this incredibly in this story.
To get back to
anyway.
Eliezer was asking about Leah.
Yeah, what about Leah?
Like, how do we see she had her tachlis was to help Eisav? Maybe from Dinah.
No, that's later on. Because everybody knew she was going to marry Eisav. No, that was a given. That's why she was crying. They knew. Yaakov and Eisav, Rachel and Leah. Why they knew it, whatever. But everybody knew. There's a shiur. How they knew it, the Medrash doesn't go into. But they all knew this. And that's why Leah was crying. It said that Leah's eyes were all puffy and all that because she spent all day crying. Because she knew she was going to marry. It's not just that she knew she was going to marry. Somehow they knew that she was the spiritual counterpart to Eisav. That's what it is. It's far more than that she knew, my parents are going to give me a shidduch, loving give me a shidduch to Eisav. No. Somehow she was Leah was a very holy woman. Believe me, God would not have arranged this if Leah wasn't the right, if she was, whatever. So,
doesn't the Kabbalah say they're from the same shorish?
Yeah. But I'm not going to the Kabbalistic concepts, I mean, this is really all Kabbalistic, but anyway, But they knew, and she knew she was the exact counterpart of his neshama. That together they're supposed to do this. That's why she was devastated. Because who's she going to marry? She's not a counterpart to any other neshama. So who's out there? I don't care how much you pay the Shatchanim. It's not going to happen. Because there is no counterpart to your soul. Yes, God runs the world. But somehow they knew it. They were holy enough to know these ideas. Anyway. But she didn't know that she would marry Yaakov. Obviously, and so on, Fabulous. We've reached half the story. I mean, where it was sort of like, because now the thing is he marries Leah, and he does the work, which means that Yaakov remained incredibly righteous. Incredibly. And you remember when Lavan runs after him, and he says, if I want, I can take everything. So Yaakov says incredibly, he says, I was your shepherd. I lost sleep over your sheep. He says to him, I didn't take a penny that wasn't mine. I lost sleep. If one of your sheep died, I replaced it with my own. I mean, who does this? What kind of a labor is that? That's a Yaakov Avinu. So we see clearly what an avodah. What would the average guy do, right? The guy goes into business with a partner, and he knows his partner's cheating and blind. What would he do? He'd reciprocate. He would cheat and blind. Right? That's what you do, to protect yourself. Yet Yaakov did not do that. And believe me, he had every rationale to do that. He remained righteous to the end. Even though he knew Lavan was taking him for a ride. See, that's Yaakov. Because they operate on a different level than we do. They operate on a level where they know everything is God. Everything. And even though Lavan is cheating me, I won't lose. Somehow God will make it up to me. And believe me, he did. Because Yaakov had a flock. I mean, when he did that, when Lavan asked him, okay, what do you want from your wages? He said, okay, give me the speckled, the spotted, and all that. And whatever he did, it was all Kabbalistically, he had poles up there and all that. He walked away with a flock that was second to none. I'm saying, he was he was the Nobel Prize in sheep herding. If there's such a Nobel Prize. But anyway, it was just incredible, because that's what these guys are. That's what tzaddikim are. They know they won't lose because the Rebbe runs the world. Not that guy. It's the Rebbe, and the Rebbe will make sure they will not lose. It's interesting. They're on a different wavelength than we are, and so on. But anyway, that's the story so far, where Yaakov took over the job of Eisav, and all of a sudden, he marries Leah, and so on. Just give you this. So what does God do, right? Here's the problem. No man can take over two jobs. Nobody. Why? Yaakov can take over piggyback his own job and the job of Eisav for a certain amount of time, but he can't take it over permanently. Why not? Because you need different characteristics. The characteristic of Yaakov was purity, was learning Torah. The characteristic of Eisav was to fight the Satan. Yaakov doesn't have that type of, to get involved with the materialism. It's not Yaakov. There's a big problem here. Yaakov cannot take over the job of Eisav permanently. He needs an assistant. But there is no assistant. There are only four of us. There's nobody else. So what's the Moshe do? He changes the spiritual paradigm. He says, okay, there's a real problem here. Yaakov cannot do this permanently. I need another guy to help him out. But another guy means he has to be an Ov. Or else what's the point? So what the Moshe did is amazing. He took one Shevet, and he elevated from the status of a Shevet to a Chatzi Ov. Half an Ov. Who was that? Yosef. That's who Yosef was. Yosef wasn't a Shevet. He was a Chatzi Ov. Where's the proof? The proof is that he had two Shvatim, Menashe and Ephraim. You can't have a Shevet unless you're an Ov. You cannot have a tribe unless you're an Ov. You know, if you're a Shevet, you can't have two Shvatim because you are equal neshamas. You need to be a superior neshama to have a inferior tribe. So because because Yosef took it over, he was able to have two Shvatim. You see. In fact, what's interesting, when Yosef talks to Paroi, he says, Even Yisrael, the rock of Israel. And if you look at the word Even, Aleph Beis is Ov, and Beis Nun is Ben. Yaakov was both an Ov, Yosef was an Ov and a Ben. There's the remez. Interesting, you know.
Took over Esau's mission.
So therefore, Yosef took over the second half of Esau's Vahus, patriarchy.
He's the son of Vach.
Who?
Interesting. He's the son of
Oh, I was waiting for somebody to ask that. Wait, hold on, you know. So Yosef took over the job. Wow. And now you understand, because it says, Vayihi kasher yolad rochel es Yosef. Then Yaakov comes over and says, I'm out of here. Why? Because I got my assistant. Now I can get out of here. Because I only have to stay here as long as I got to do the job of Eisav. But Yosef is going to take over the rest of the job. I'm out of here. Enough is enough. And therefore he left.
He was just born. He wasn't gonna.
Didn't make a difference. It didn't make a difference. He just had to get out of that place. You know. Because as long as the neshama can do the Esav's job, his job is over. As long as there's no neshama that can do that job, hey, you're the point man. There's nobody else. But once Yosef was born, and then that neshama grew up, and that's what he did. Yosef became incredible. You know. So therefore, that's why, you know. Isn't this better than a TV serial? Think about that. Isn't this better than watching TV and watching some kind of a story? It's incredible. What a fascinating story. To look at what happens here and how God is up there enjoying himself, almost. Orchestrating this incredible story of Yosef, Yakov, Eisav, Yitzchak. It's unbelievable what's going on here. You see. So what happens? So Eisav, or rather Yaakov, now leaves Lavan. What is that? Who? Maybe you could tell. What? What? What?
How does that answer why the brothers want their children?
Because Yosef used to comb his hair. Right? He spoke Lashon Hara. So they thought Yosef is a budding Eisav. So therefore we got to kill him. Just like Yaakov had to sell the Bechorah, right? Buy it, because Eisav was destroying the planet. If Yosef is an Ov, a half an Ov, he's going to wipe out the planet. And if he's combing his hair and looking pretty, he's doing the exact same thing that Eisav did. That was the young Eisav. Gotta get rid of this guy. See? Makes perfect sense. Because they realized.
Why did Reuven try to save him if it was so?
Because it's still a brother. I mean, you know, it's the fault of brother. You know, it's a... Listen, you know. Why did Avram pray for Yishmael? It's his son.
What's with Yishmael?
Anyway.
Yishmael has anything to do with an Arab or something?
Yeah. Did you notice in the Parshas today, Chai Sarah? How many kids did Yishmael have?
12.
Why 12? He quit what? Connected the Shvatim. Why would Yishmael have 12 kids, which is the exact opposite parallel to the 12 tribes? Because Yishmael also had that koyach, which is interesting. Yeah.
So where does he fit into this whole narrative?
Because really, ultimately, Yitzchak and Yishmael were parallels, just like Yaakov and Eisav. And therefore Yishmael has to have 12 tribes.
So Yishmael's also love.
In that sense, yes. But his job again is the left side, to destroy the sun.
Why was the story that we're talking about, Yaakov and Eisav, the same story as Yitzchak and Yishmael? Because
Yaakov and Eisav are the finalities. They're the ones who solidified Klal Yisrael. Yishmael and Yitzchak didn't. They're what's called the intermediary ofs. The real finalization of Klal Yisrael as the nation that will do the tikkun is Yaakov.
So Yishmael was a false start for the...
It's not that he did tshuva. Yishmael did tshuva.
But did the
Saying
Shmuel fail in his...
It was a false start in terms of being an Av for a thing, or...
It's not a start. That's his job.
Did the
That's why
Shmuel
he-
fail just like Eisav failed? Or it was a little different?
Well, it's a good question, I mean, Shmuel was a Rosh, so he did tshuva. That's why they named...
There's a big difference.
Why did they name Tanoim Rabbi Shmuel? How do you name a kid after a Russia? Did you ever hear of a guy named Eisav? I'm waiting for somebody to apply as a Rosh Yeshiva job. They ask, what's your name? Rabbi Eisav.
There is a major difference.
I'm waiting for that. It's not going to happen.
There is a major difference between Yishmael and Eisav. Eisav has the same mother as Yakov. Yishmael doesn't have the same mother as
What?
Yitzchak.
Mother.
Yeah.
Hey, say it again?
Yaakov and Eisav have the same mother.
Yeah.
Yishmael,
Did not, yes.
had a
Hagar.
Yeah, so
It's not the same.
something is missing.
Although Hagar was a very righteous woman.
Okay,
we
but she
don't
was
know
not at M, no?
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's obviously them. But it's still Yishmael had a major job.
You said 2 weeks ago that the Yishmael has a special power to get
Yeah,
straight.
I didn't. Yeah, that's right. He can also draw down kedusha just like the Jews. Why? Because whatever. I mean, it's not simple, But anyway, so far this was happening. So we now know the story that Yosef took over the job of Eisav, and that's why it says in the pasuk, "V'hoyul beis Yaakov le'esh." Yaakov is like a fire. Ubeis Yosef in the house of Joseph, lehova is the flame of that fire, and together beis Eisav lekash. Eisav will be reduced to stubble, straw. You need both, you see. And so far we're at that, and we're at the middle of the story here, when Yaakov is about to meet Eisav. What happens? And it's cataclysmic. And what the Torah does is incredible. How the Torah alludes to the real theme in just a couple of words. It's astounding. Well, they stopped.
But the finish now is just a song.
Oh, okay. Should I go further?
There we go.
What?
Yeah.
I can't make this into a cliffhanger.
Nice.
No.
You guys bated breath.
Just came.
What?
We won't survive. No.
You won't survive.
No.
You're not going to last, right? Wow. Now I want to tell you something. I won't be here for the next 2 weeks.
So
I won't be here the next 2
we have
weeks.
to
You
make
have
up.
to finish.
So I have to fly. I leave you guys for 2 weeks. You guys won't last.
No.
I know you guys. You're gonna call. I have to go to Eretz Yisrael. Whatever. So the next Shabbos I won't be here, and the following, and then the third one I will be here. So anyway, so
We have to finish this subject.
yeah, it was like.
What time, the third Shabbos? 8:45?
Oh yeah, 8:45. Apparently it works for everybody, So let me just. So Yaakov meets Eisav, right? And the Medrash says that he took Dinah, who was the daughter of Leah, and he hid her in the chest. Why? Because Eisav would have looked at her, and Dinah was a very powerful girl. Dinah was what they call a Yatsonis. She was not aggressive, I hate to use that word. She was an assertive girl. She was what the Baal Tshuva movement is looking for women. She could walk over to any guy and make him a Baal Tshuva. And so had Eisav looked at Dinah, and Dinah was this, because it says, Vatetse Dinah. And she was a real, she was a take charge person. Anyway, so Yaakov hides her in the chest. And Eisav, of course, never saw her and saw him. So God says, how do you do this stuff? How do you keep her in the chest where Eisav won't see her? So you will be punished. You want to give it to Eisav? She's going to Shechem, forcibly, which was the whole story of Dinah, and so on. So my question is, excuse me, what is this? You mean, he didn't want to marry off his daughter to Carlo Gambino, to Al Capone? So therefore what? Therefore he's got to get punished for this? It's astounding. You will never find an answer to this question. The Baalei Mussar give a answer, but it's not a real answer. They say, well, of course, God's complaint wasn't the fact that Yaakov hid his daughter. Of course he had to hide his daughter. Nobody's going to give it to Al Capone. But here's the problem. Why don't you at least feel sorry? You have to hide your daughter because your brother, is Russia and so on. He should have felt sorry at least. And that was the complaint. Okay, that's a Musa idea. Somehow that's deficient. I'll tell you an answer. I've never seen anywhere else. And as far as I know, nobody's answers this. Here's what I feel is the answer, really, and it fits exactly with the storyline. What God saw is that, listen, it's terrible that Eisav is a Rasha, because Eisav had incredible personal talents. Such as an Ov. Being an Ov means incredible talents. Brilliant guy. In fact, it says in the Medrash, that until Eisav became a Rasha, you couldn't distinguish between Yaakov and Eisav. At 13 years old, you could not distinguish between the two. They were both Iluyim. They were both geniuses. It says that you couldn't distinguish between the two. What are we talking about? We're talking about a 1-year-old kid. 13-year-old, 2 kids, Eisav and Yaakov, and you cannot tell the difference between the personalities. That's how awesome both of them were. You see, so you realize. So therefore, it's terrible that this type of a person shouldn't be in the Jewish people to help them. What a powerful man this is. What a tragedy. Number 1. Number 2, could you have any idea the pain that Yitzchak had that his son became evil? Yitzchak realized who Eisav is, the power of this man, the potential of this man. What a tremendous pain that he looks at Eisav, and Eisav is a Rasha. See. And there's something else. So what the Baruch Shem says, Yaakov, you should have realized something. What? 1 is that, remember the angel, Yaakov, before he met Eisav, fought the Malach. He fought a man. Vayeovek ish imoy. And Yaakov fought a man. We read it was Satan. And then Yaakov, the daybreak, and he's holding the Malach, which is incredible, and the Malach says, send me. So Yaakov says, you give me a blessing. It's an incredible story. How does a man fight an angel? And what do you mean? What do you mean bless me? And when he blessed him, he just called the name Yisrael. That's not a blessing. You know what I'm saying? Well, what is this story about? It's among one of the most mystical stories you've ever. Yaakov, he puts his family on one side of the Yabok, whatever. He goes back to get some kadur, some jars. He meets this guy, and they're locked into a death struggle. Like, what is this? So that story screams at you and says, listen, don't look at me this way. This isn't a story. This is an unbelievable story of incredible mystical proportions. What is the story? The story is this. Yaakov is leaving Lavan, you see. And Yaakov feels incredibly proud. And the Medrash says that Yaakov felt incredibly proud. Why? Because he subdued Eisav, and not only that, he subdued Lavan. He beat them both. He remained righteous. You see. So here's the problem. Yaakov never had the Yetzer Hara that Eisav had. The Malach of Eisav was the Satan. Yaakov's Malach is not the Satan. Therefore, the drive to do evil, Yaakov never experienced it the way Eisav did. So therefore, here's the time. Yaakov is now about to experience a drive to sin that is second to none. That is an Eisav drive. What is that? So the Medrash says that Yaakov Avinu left Lavan with unbelievable delusions of grandeur. That's why it says he built a mizbeach called Keil El Kei Avraham, And it says that Yaakov Avinu he was like a god. You see. So at that point in time, why? Because of what he did. That he achieved incredible righteousness. So what did the Satan do? So the Sipuna gives a very interesting clue. He says, Yaakov, what was it really an angel? It was a man. Who was the man? It was a Satan. Because the way the Satan appears to you is in your mind as a man, as part of your nature. So the Sipuna says an incredible thing. Yaakov spent the whole night trying to break the delusion that he's a god. Gaiva. He fought Gaiva. I mean, could you imagine? You know, here's a guy, right? What? He beat Eisav, remained righteous. He beat Lavan. Not only that, he has the 12 tribes. He has Yehuda, who's the beginning of Mashiach ben David. He's got, right, Yosef, who's the beginning of Mashiach ben Yosef. And he's got the 12 Shvatim. Wow, a guy can say, I'm incredible. Look what I did. And Yaakov had to contend with that thought, which was making him an incredible gaiva the whole night. And the Yetzer Hara to make him feel like about gaiva was the Satan himself. That was his shining moment. He had to subdue the Satan and feel like an onaf, you see. And Yaakov did. He was able to break the delusion. And he said to himself, like, who am I really in the end? It's great I did this, but he faltered. He wasn't perfect in his nisayon. There was some aspect of him that was disproportionate to what he should have felt. And therefore, the Sultan was able to hit him and injure him in his limb, the Gir HaNoshe. How? Because that slight sin or faltering of an nisayon would allow the Sultan, right, to defect him in some way. That's where it comes from, you see. The Medrash says this. I'm not making this up, you know. And all of a sudden, imagine the night is about to end, and Yaakov Avinu doesn't know what's going on. I mean, he's this incredible taiva to be a bagaiva. And all of a sudden, he wins. And all of a sudden, this man turns into an angel. He says, I'm the guy. And you beat me because you subdued me. So Yaakov Avinu realized he now won the greatest battle of all. He actually experienced the Satan, the Yetzer Hara of Eisav, and he won. So he says to the Malach, bless me, because if I won over you, I need you to admit. He didn't want the Satan to bless him. He said, listen, you're the Malach of Eisav. I need you to admit that I won. And I am entitled to the brachas, not your guy, Eisav. And that's why, that's the blessing that Yaakov wanted. That's, you should be mazel tov, the Sultan isn't the Rebbe. You should have nachas from your kids. I mean, they can just the Sultan, give him the bracha like that. You should grow up to be a Talmud Chacham. You should have nachas from your kids. You should marry a great woman. Whatever, you should sit all day in shiur and learn. I want to give you hasmada. Excuse me. Well, this is a Rebbe, isn't it? This Satan doesn't do that. What was the bracha? Your name shall now be called Yisrael. Kisarisa, because you contended with man and you won. That was what Yaakov wanted the Satan to admit, that he deserves the blessings. He is Klal Yisrael, not Eisav. And the Satan bowed and he says, your name is now Yisrael because you won, right? And now you are the Jewish people. You won. It's no longer, Eisav has no claim whatsoever. You see? That's really what the Sultan gave him. Because that's what Yaakov Avinu wanted. He wanted an admission, an acknowledgement. The Sultan himself was the angel of Eisav. Like Rashi says, he fought with the Sarish of Eisav. But it was over the Gaiva that he did it. Okay. And now he's about to meet Eisav. But Yaakov should have realized something.
What was the son that healed him?
What?
The son that healed him. What is that referring to?
Well, eventually he was healed because Yaakov realized what he did. And so on. And then it says what? But Yaakov came to Sukkah Sholem. Perfect. He finally beat the Malach of Eisav in his own game by withstanding that incredible Yetzer Hara. And he's about, right, all of a sudden he meets Eisav. So Yaakov should have realized something. Wait a minute. I just beat the Malach, your guy. And not only that, he admitted that I'm the guy, which means that the hold that the Sultan has on Eisav is weakened. That's the problem. That means if you beat the Sultan, you've weakened that Malach. If you've weakened that Malach, Eisav is ready for tshuva. All he needs is a good girl. Dinah would have finished them off. That's the problem. So that was the first thing that Yaakov should realize. That Eisav is weak in his evil because he just wiped out the Satan. You know, he won, and now the Satan ran home, you know. Which means that the connection between the Satan and Eisav is tremendously weakened. And all he needs is Dinah. That's the first proof he should have realized. Second proof, he should have realized this. Eisav is coming to kill him. Instead, Eisav kisses him. And Rav Shimon Yochai says that was a real kiss. Hey, what is this? You imagine a guy's coming to kill you and he's kissing you? Not for the reasons that a lot of people would like to think. Right? Because that means Eisav is weak. And he's already beginning to think, maybe I was wrong. Maybe Yaakov is the guy that really deserved the bracha. Hey, he's halfway there. And then the third thing, which is incredible, when he says Yehi Lecha Sheloch, and Rashi says, Mikan Hoidala Brachas. Eisav admitted to Yaakov, it's yours. Wow. So Yaakov should have said, I don't believe what's happening. If that's the case, he's halfway gone. I just have to give him Dinah, and Dinah will finish him off. Dinah will make him a former Jew. That's why God said to him, what are you doing? Why are you not realizing this? 3 things just happened that you need to think about. That Dinah is the guy that will save Eisav. But he didn't realize. So he said, that's the Oynish. You didn't realize. Now we don't know why Yaakov didn't realize this. We don't know why. I mean, look, Yaakov is not a regular person. We don't know what really went in his mind. You can't look at Yaakov like a regular guy, and, whatever it was. But we do know that God had complaints against him, because that's the Medrash. That we do know, right? So we can say Yaakov made a mistake, clearly. Well, so why do this? So that's what the Moshe said. How do you do this? Let me show you something. Imagine if Dinah would have been out, and she would have married Eisav. What would that mean? 1, look at this. Then the power of Eisav would come back into the Jewish people, wouldn't it? Hey, right? Eisav becomes a son-in-law of Yaakov. He's married his daughter, right? And Dinah changed him, did tshuva. So that means Esav's power comes back into our service. That's number 1. Number 2, there wouldn't be such a thing as Rome. It wouldn't be Eisav, Edom, and Rome. We wouldn't have all those Edom. They wouldn't exist because they all come from Eisav. You imagine if there was no Roman Empire, no Christianity, none of this stuff, and this is all Edom. Do you believe this?
America would be a fully Jewish country.
What?
America would be a fully Jewish country.
Well, fully Jewish country. Yeah, the president would have been Jewish.
No, just everybody would be Jewish.
Yeah, well, okay. But, I mean, we don't know what the historical...
There wouldn't be the halacha of Esau Yaakov.
Of course, that's gone. It's gone. So, number 1, what an incredible thing to have the power of Eisav in our potential. Second thing, there wouldn't be Edom. There wouldn't be any of this stuff. That persecute that have killed hundreds of millions of Jews. Right? And not only that, wow, he would have restored what? He would have restored Eisav to Jews. Could you imagine the simcha on Yitzchak's face that his son did tshuva? Wow, is there any greater kibbut over aim than that? Incredible.
Would there even been a Mitzrayim?
Forget about what, this is all conjecture. I'm just telling you, Maisa, what would have happened. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, but if they would have brought the Tikkun at that point, why would they need Mitzrayim?
I don't want to deal with that. I want to do this story, In any case, could be there wouldn't have been. Whatever. This is all conjecture, but I'm telling you, clearly what it would have been. Eisav would have done tshuva, 1. And that's why God complained. He would have done tshuva. Eisav would have done tshuva, number 1. Number 2, there would be no Edom and all this stuff, because Eisav did tshuva, and they all come from Edom, Eisav, right? And not only that, he would have done kibbut over aim. Wow, what a mitzvah, to restore Eisav to his father, to Yitzchak. What a mitzvah. But he didn't do it. You see. So what happens? So what happens? Eisav didn't do tshuva, right? How do we know everything I'm saying is true? How do we know that? I will tell you. Is that a chumash?
Yeah.
Let me show you something. What the Torah does. This is beyond belief. How the Torah can say the entire story. There it is. Wow. Right on the page. Okay. And it says, okay, Eisav, okay, Yaakov says, okay, I'll see you around. I got all my kids, it says it's hard to travel. We'll get together someday. Fine, okay. Look at the way the Torah describes this. Incredible. It says, Vayoshev bayomahu Eisav. And Eisav returned on that day, because he left, the darkoi, to his way, seira, to Seir. Why does the Torah say? It should say, and Eisav returned on that day to Seir. What's this ledarkoi? So it sounds like the darkoi means whatever way. No, the darkoi horishus. The Torah is saying that Eisav returned as a rasha. Why? Because Yaakov failed to do what he had to do. The Torah is actually being merames. The whole allusion to the whole story lies in one word, ledarkoi. But the Torah is saying that he returned to his way, not his way of traveling, his way of evil. Unbelievable how a whole story could be alluded to in one word. Classic Torah. You see, that's the story of Dinah. Okay? Does it answer the question? Yeah. But then what happened? Wait. And take a look what happened. So what does God do? Okay. So Dinah, listen to this. You know how it's when you think it's incredible. Right? What happens if Eisav would have married Dinah? Did tshuva? Who would have been born? Osnas. Right? Osnas. Why? Because instead, Shem forcibly took Dinah, and they had Osnas. Osnas. She's really the daughter of who? Of Dinah. It's the story, So what happened? They were very embarrassed by Osnas because she was the product of rape. So they sent her to Egypt. In Egypt what happened? Okay, Egypt what happened? She became part of the household of Potiphar. Osnas, who's a Jew, because it's Dinah. And she's she's a daughter of one of the Shva of Dinah, What does all this mean? And then Yosef goes to Egypt. Or what does he marry? Osnas. Oh, there's something going on here. There's something going on here. Dinah and Shem, the product is Osnas. Osnas goes to Egypt to Potiphar's house, and Yosef goes to Potiphar's house, right? And when finally he gets out of prison, Parshas says, okay, I'll give you a great shidduch. Who's the shidduch? The daughter, whatever, of Potiphar, or the adopted daughter. Who's that? Osnas. Who's Osnas? The daughter of Dinah. Wow. Yosef married a Jewess, right? Unbelievable, you see. So therefore, what would that mean? Imagine, Eisav would do tshuva. He would marry Dinah. Who would be the daughter? Osnas, because she had to come out from Dinah, right? Who married Osnas? Yosef. So therefore, the power of Eisav as the union of Yosef to subdue destruction, which is what Yosef took over, would have continued. Because Yosef would have been the son-in-law of Eisav, who took over his job. Wow, what a continuation of the line. That's what would have happened. Instead, he still had to marry Osnas. Why? Because Osnas is from Dinah. So instead, to get Osnas, they had to go to Egypt and so on. But imagine, he would have been the son-in-law of Eisav, and Eisav lost the ability to, subdue evil, but his son-in-law would have taken it over. What a loss. You see, what a loss, which is amazing when you think about that. And therefore, the power of Eisav was lost. And Edom came, Christianity, Rome, they destroyed the Beis Hamikdash. All because Eisav didn't do tshuva. And all of that was the darker, you see. I'll tell you one more thing, because this can go on and on. One more incredible remez. How the Torah alludes to it in one word. an entire profound concept, part of the story. We know Yosef took over. Yes, we know that. And Yaakov failed to bring Eisav back. But wait a minute. If Yosef takes over, what does he have to do? When Yaakov took over the job of Eisav, what did he do? He had to go to Lavan. He saw that. He had to go into the field. Yes? So if Yosef takes over that job, where does Yosef have to go?
That's right.
Exactly.
You
That's
do it
why.
the same time.
Yosef had to go to Egypt because he had to go into the field and remain righteous. Yes? That's why when Yosef and Yaakov knew that, he knew he's going to go into some terrible country, but he didn't know which. He didn't know which. So that's why, what does it say? It says that Yosef comes along with this bunch of dreams. You know, the storks and the stars and the moon, you know. And it says by Yaakov, and the brothers are going crazy with jealousy, right? And it says Yaakov, Shoma Sadova. And Yaakov watched it. What are we watching it? Because he knew that this is exactly what's going to happen to Yosef. Yosef is a heifer of. He's going to go to some crazy country, subdue it, and be king. He knew that. That's why it says Shoma Sadova. Was all the tribe brothers wanted to kill him. He said, no, this is exactly, you see. So what did he do? Before Yaakov went to Lavan, where did Yaakov disappear for 14 years? The yeshiva of Shem V'Eva. Why? He's 63 years old and he's running away? And he's got to go to yeshiva at 63? You know, what is this, a new spur to learn? A new wave of Hasmada? No. Because the Torah that Yaakov learned was, whatever, Kabbalah, incredible, whatever, we don't even know what he learned. But if you're going to go into evil, you got to learn another Torah. You better get yourself charged up with Musa, because you're about to face the devil himself, you know. That's a whole different project, you know. So he said, so all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he goes to Yeshiva Shem V'Eva for 14 years, because that's what you need. You need to learn the Yeshiva Shem V'Eva for 14 years, because you're going to fight the devil now. You better know what you're doing. If Yaakov knew that Yosef was going to go into a country, what does he have to teach him? So David says, Ben Zekunim Huloi, because it says that he taught Yosef everything he learned in Shem V'Eva. Why? Because Yosef needs the same instruction, how to beat the Satan. It's incredible. The Torah, it doesn't say any of this, but look at what the themes that are answered. It's unbelievable how everything fits. That's why Yaakov had to teach Yosef Shem V'Eva. Because Shoma Sadova, he knew Yosef has to go into the klipa, as they say, into the field to subdue evil. So you got to teach him the same thing you did. You see. And of course, what happened? Yosef went. But Yaakov didn't know where. But the Rebbe knew something. Of course Yosef has to go into evil. There's no pride. Of course, you know. But I cannot allow Yaakov to know. Therefore, the Rebbe allowed the Shvatim to kidnap him. Why? Because Yaakov needs a kapora, an atonement for kibbud over aim. Therefore, I'll combine everything with one shot. He will be gone for 22 years. Yaakov will have a kapora because he's agonizing over his son who can't serve him for 22 years. And that was a sin that you did to your father, that you didn't serve Yitzchak for 22 years. So you get your kapora. Yosef subdues evil in Egypt. I mean, look at what's going on here, you know. I mean, it's the Russian, it's incredible what he's orchestrating, right? And so on. And finally, so Yosef goes to Egypt. What's the problem here? Yosef has to subdue evil. So where does Yosef have to go? He goes to Potiphar's wife. Listen to this, right? There's a Potiphar's wife, Potiphar, and all of a sudden, his wife takes a liking to Yosef. And she says, hey, I like you. Let's do something. What is that all about, really? Why is this considered such an incredible story? I want to tell you something. There are a lot of guys that go to 42nd Street or 47th Street and have, I hate to say it, beautiful women walking around, you know? A lot of guys, you know, withstand temptation. And so Yosef withstood temptation. You think he's the only guy that withstood that type of temptation? Believe me, a lot of guys did it. So what's this incredible credit that we give Yosef? You hear the question? Good question. It's a solid question.
Yeah, but she went after him.
So what?
Yes.
A lot of girls that go after guys, and they still say no. They say no. I'm not saying everybody does that, but there are a lot of guys. Religious Jews says no. You know, that's what part of the world is, you know. Many Jews that said no. Some people succumb, it's true. But that's not a reason to succumb. And many people that say no. So the question is, why is this considered so great? That is the question. You know what the answer is? Tell you something. Because Yosef has to experience the same drive as Eisav, or he cannot take his place. When did that happen? Fatifa's wife. The Yetzer Hara that Yosef had for Fatifa's wife was beyond recognition. He experienced the drive that Eisav has, which is that Eisav is his malach, not some subsidiary of the malach, the Satan. It's the drive of the Satan himself, which is beyond belief. And Yosef is teetering. No, he's teetering because this drive was awesome, you see. And of course, he subdued it, basically. He slipped, and that had enormous repercussions later on. But basically, he subdued it. He didn't go with her. Got it? Where do you see this in the Torah? Incredible. Because the Torah says the following. It's so innocuous. Yet, in one word...
It was innocuous.
What?
Innocuous.
Who?
Innocuous? I can't
Innocuous means it's so innocent. Vayehi, and it was, ki hayoyim hazeh, as this day. And what as this day was? The original as this day, when Yaakov brought off the Bechorah. So the Torah is warning us what's about to happen. Vayovi habayisa, he goes to the house, Yosef, lasas malachtoi, to do his job. What job? To be the housekeeper? No, the job of Eisav. The Torah is telling us, in illusion, here it comes. He's going to have a Yetzer Hara that's second to none, because he needs to experience Eisav's Satan. Okay, and then it says, okay, so he's going to do his job, but mystically it means the job of his spirituality. Then what it says, V'ein ish me'anshe habayis shama boys, and there was no man of the household in the house. Now, the way I read it should have said like this, V'ein ish shama boys, and there was no man there. What do you mean there was no man of the household in the house? It sounds like a little strange language here. Yes? It should have just said, like I said, V'ein ish, and there was no man, shama boys, there in the house. Why does it say, and there was no man from the household in the house? You know why? Because what's the implication? There was no man from the household, but there was another man who was not part of the household there. Who is the man? Vayeovek ish imoi. And the man fought with Yaakov. Who is the man? The Satan. So the Torah is merames. There was no man there. No, there was no man of the household there. And the diuk of that is, but there was another man, not of the household. If you didn't want to have that diuk, it should have just said there was no man at home. No, there was no man of the household, but there was another man. Who was that? The guy, Vayovik Ishimoy, the guy that fought with Yaakov. Who was that? The Satan. So the Torah is telling us the Satan is there about to really do him in. Amazing. From that, Me'anshe habayis is the whole remez of what the whole story of Fatifa's wife video is all about. It's a setup that, let's see what Yosef does in order to do the job of Eisav. And then it says, and she grabbed his clothing, and so on. And she said, okay, be with me. And left the clothing in her hand, and then he ran to the outside and so on. This is the supreme test. And this is the test that made Yosef the tzaddik. You see, let me ask something. What did Yosef do? He passed an unbelievable test, you see. And what happened? He wound up in prison. You know, a guy goes to prison, there's two ways to get out of prison. Either serve your sentence, or you get a good lawyer. You know what I'm saying? How else do you get out of prison? You know what I'm saying? There's another way. There's a third way. Third way. What's a third way? The third way is that, why did Paro have his dreams? Why would he dream this? You see, because what happened was incredible. Because by Yosef withstanding the tzidkus, the tzaddik, what he did is he took out all the holiness out of the Satan. So the Satan was starving. Because he took out all the Yanika. When the Satan is yonik from the Chatoin, Yosef's tzidkus took out an enormous amount of sparks of holiness, kedusha, energy from the Satan. If the Satan is starving, then his firstborn is starving. Who is that? Egypt. So Yosef created the famine of Egypt.
So where's the plenty come from?
With what?
The plenty. Beforehand there was a...
Because Moshe had Rachmanis, because it would have killed everybody. So he sent them 7 years of plenty. But, so okay, that's not a big kasha. Thank God, But 7 years of famine? Because Yosef is the one who created the famine. Because he wiped out the Satan. So therefore Egypt starved, because that's the firstborn of the Satan.
Not Eisav.
Now.
I mean, it should be Eisav.
Who?
Why Mitzrayim? It should be Eisav, no?
Who?
The firstborn of the Satan.
No, this is much later by Yosef. Eisav was as a character, he's gone. I mean, the Satan has him in his hand. That's the end, But the nation that represents the Satan is Egypt. The man that represents is Eisav. But there's always a nation that's the greatest. That's Egypt, you see. So Egypt is starving because the Satan is starving, you see. Why? So what's that going to do? So it was the starvation of Egypt that caused Paroi, the king, to have a dream that Egypt will starve. And since nobody can interpret the dream, right? So of course Yosef can interpret the dream. So what got Yosef out of prison? The dream about starvation, which he caused, you see, which is interesting. You see, what a way to get out of prison, you can either serve your term, hire a lawyer, or you can wipe out the whole kitrug, the whole prosecution. And once a Satan he's empty, he has to let go. And all of a sudden, what is created is the circumstances that get you out of prison. So you got out of prison. It's amazing. We see what's happening. Okay. And then, of course, once he gets out of prison, what has to happen? Yosef, you ever ask yourself a question? Pari called him to interpret a dream. Yes? Fine. He did a great job. He was a consultant. Why would a guy make a consultant, the Grand Vizier? Well, it doesn't make so sense. Imagine, the Queen, I don't know what today's hot, imagine President of the United States says, I need you as a consultant, right? And you come, you consult. And then the guy gives you great advice. And you say, I like your advice. You're my VP. You're my Vice President. What logic is that? You mean he became the Grand Vizier, the Vice President, because he gave power advice? Okay, it was great advice. What does this have to do with a job of being the Grand Vizier? You ever think about that? It's some bizarre here. He was a consultant. He was a dream interpreter. That's all he was. He had union wages. Right? And so on. He probably sent Paro a bill. Consultant bill. Right? So why would Paro make him a what? A Grand Vizier. That's the second most powerful person in Egypt. And the answer is, because since Yosef wiped out the energy of the Satan, then Kedusha must rise to the level. What happens in the heavens must equal here. If what Yosef did here in heaven was to enormously deplete the Satan, then whoever represents the Satan must be depleted here. And Yosef has to rise to equal that. So Paro had no choice. He had to make. Because the rule is that when evil is subdued here, right up there, because of your righteousness, then automatically this world must reflect that subduing, and all of a sudden holiness rises to match Parai. You know where you see that? You know where you see the same thing? Purim. How is it possible that Haman is about to kill the Mordechai, and the next day you find that Mordechai is on the steed, and Haman is getting the horse? I mean, what kind of switch is that? And the answer is, again, because since the Jewish people fasted 3 days, they depleted the Satan, so therefore down here must reflect that depletion. So therefore Mordechai has to now rise above Haman, because in heaven the holiness is now above Tumah. Interesting. It's a barometer. Whatever you see here is the barometer of high. And since Yosef lowered Parai, he lowered the whole status of Egypt. He had to rise equal to Parai, not above Parai. That would take the rest of the Jewish people in the next 210 years. They would wipe out Egypt because they finished off the job. But Yosef, as an Chatzi of, finished off Egypt. And therefore Yosef had two tribes, because he was the guy. You know what I'm saying? And I'll give you what I think is a modern day example. This is something that's weird. You know, it's weird. But I will tell you something. What?
With a weird disclaimer, I would just expect something.
Yes.
Weird.
Oh, yeah. You know, this is like, you know, the Messiah says that God will send back all the evil people that have done tremendous evil to come. They will reincarnate and continue the evil because He wants to finish them off. Okay. Adrianus, the guy that killed the 12 martyrs, who is he today? He's back. Who is he? I told you it's going to be weird. This is called, using this to really...
I hope he's not here.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
What was Hadrian, really? He was the emperor of Rome, wasn't he? Right? Why did he kill the 10 martyrs? Why? Because he said to them, he said, they kidnapped Yosef. What's the punishment for kidnapping? Death. So he said to the rabbis in those days, why didn't these tribes get death penalty? They kidnapped Yosef, and according to your laws, it's a death penalty. This was never meted out to them. So he's using Yosef's story, right? Kidnap Yosef as a pretext. So he said, there has never been 10 guys like you. I'm going to kill you all. You guys are the punishment. What should have happened to those 10 tribes, because Benjamin wasn't born yet, and Yosef was the kidnappee, right? I'm going to kill you all. You guys will stand in place of the 10 tribes, and I kill you all. This is a Hadrian. It's a Gemara. This is famous. We read this on Yom Kippur, and we read this in Tisha B'Av, Wow. Right? Okay. But remember, so the question is, okay, it's all about Yosef. Hadrian used Yosef, the pretext. Of course he wanted to kill them all, but he used Yosef as a pretext. What's the story of Yosef here? The story basically is, why are there 10 martyrs? Why? Because they were all a kapora for the failure of Yosef. Because Yosef faltered. How? Because even though he wasn't with Potiphar's wife, right, he was so aroused, was beyond belief, and we're talking about the Sultan, right, that 10 drops came out of him. Those 10 drops created a tremendous damage in creation, because Yosef was right? That's why they're 10. So these 10 tzaddikim had to die because of that, without going into a lot of the mystical stuff and so on. So that's why you have 10 martyrs, because of those drops. But the interesting about this is that, how did Potiphar's wife prove? Because she grabbed onto his beged. She grabbed onto his beged with those drops. And she comes to her husband and say, hey, look what the guy tried to do to me. And Yosef fled. It was a classic setup. She accused him falsely because she was the one. He ran away, which was incredible. and she's getting him, and therefore, of course, he sent him to prison for those 2 years.
Is that a midrash that she grabbed the part of it with the drops? Because the midrash says she grabbed his back.
Big dough.
Yeah, but the midrash says, because how do they prove? How did Potiphar know that she was lying? Because it's not his Chachamim there that they realize that if
it's from the back, that means he's fleeing.
Right.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that there are drops involved and there's a begging involved. That's all.
Oh, okay.
That's all. Fine. Okay.
Sounds like Clinton Lewinsky.
What?
Sounds like
Yeah,
Clinton Lewinsky.
Exactly.
Seriously?
I want.
Yeah.
Listen carefully. Who is Hadrian? Hadrian is the head of Rome. Who is Rome today? America. Eisav, Edom. Edom is America, greatest nation on the world. That's very good. If Hadrian is the head of Rome, who is the head of America? The president. Yes? Okay. So, Hadrian comes back as a president. Yes? You named him. Right?
He's still in the picture.
Yeah, wait. Yeah. Okay. All of a sudden, he commits this act with, we know, Lewinsky, right? What got him, and he's lying to his teeth and all that, right? And so on. What got him caught? The beged, right? And on that beged were those drops, and he got caught with that, right? I said this at that time, that I feel he's a Gilgal of Adrianus, whatever. And therefore he allowed Arafat in his house. Arafat was invited to the White House more times than any other statement while he was killing Jews left and right. Now how does a guy do this? And he never gave off Arafat. Here he agrees to make peace with Rabin and all that. He's killing Jews left and right. How does an American president not say, excuse me, this is a breach of contract. You agreed. How do you do this? So you should have taken Arafat and thrown him out of the White House. You right? I mean, where's the morality of this guy? Instead, he invited him more times than any other head of state. And he's not even the head of a state. Okay. Because that's what his job is. Without getting into the whole thing. Okay? Now, I said this. I said, well, where's my proof? How do I know? It's a nice conjecture. They impeached him. Do you know what the Parsha was when they impeached him? They impeached Clinton. Do you know what the Parsha of the week was? The Sedra of when he was impeached? Vayeshev. Interesting. It's Vayeshev. You know. And,
That's Yosef. What does that have to do with Hadrian or with Clinton? I'm saying it's
because Hadrian used the story of Yosef to kill the 10 martyrs. He used that story. That's what it is. That's in the davening. He used that story to kill the 10 martyrs. He said, the death penalty is for kidnapping, is death. So why did they kill the 10 tribes? You see, and they couldn't answer him. So he said, okay, I'm going to kill you 10 chachamim. And he just killed them all. Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Chanina ben Trajan, Sarah Ruga Malchus. You see? Anyway, that was just an interesting, thought, which is old news already. But anyway, just an interesting, and so on. But in any case, this is the story. We just gone through the story of Yakov and Eisav, Yosef, Egypt. We just went from Toldos to the end of Parshas and answered who knows how many questions, all with one story. No patch job. Because the truth is, like I said, and the Torah alludes to everything in one or two words. Anshe habayis, ledarkoi, it's in hayoim. You see, the thing is that the Torah has a second story going on. The incredible thing about the Torah is that the exact same words that it uses for one narrative are the exact same words it uses for the other narrative, which is amazing, because really it's another story. Yet the narrative is the same. When you learn the Chumash, you got to pick this out and say, wait a minute, why do we have this word? Why is this here? You see, so you have to go down into the real story, the theme. And the real theme is astounding. It's all messianic. It's all about the job of a Jew. Fight evil, bring holiness down. It's all about the tikkun process, the process of correction and rectification. That's what it's all about. These are not just stories. These are a divine attempt to assist the Jews to rectify creation, to deplete the Satan, and to bring down the Kedusha. That's what it is. So this whole evening is nothing more than an attempt to get you to understand what this book is.
But if Ephraim Menashe disappeared, basically, so who's going to do Esav's jobs now? I mean,
Sheikh Yosef. Thank you. So next week and the week after, no shiur, and the following week we come back.
I just think that